"You're nothing but our retirement fund with a heartbeat," Ethan said, and the knife of it cut slower than applause as forks stilled and my daughter Ava looked at me like someone who'd just watched a house on fire without knowing where I hid the matches. "My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 43, from Toledo, Ohio. And for a long time I swallowed the laugh like a medicine because I thought it kept the family breathing. I also keep receipts, every bill, every transfer, every late-night payment confirmation I ever made, and that stubborn habit is a quiet promise I don't explain to anyone." The restaurant light blinked off the glass of my coffee mug, chipped on one side where I always knocked it on the counter, fixing the old house, and the mug sat between us like an accusation and a talisman both. My mother Martha's laugh sounded thin, my father Robert's jaw clenched like an old engine, and Claire Ethan's wife smiled in the way people smile when they're stacking someone else's shame into the story they want to tell. They were all there. Neighbors, co-workers from Ethan's new startup, the town councilman who'd given Ethan a ribbon last month, the waitress who used to watch me pay in cash when my checks bounced. Their faces were the weather, and I was the headline. I wanted, more than anything, for Ava to see him as the man she mustn't ever become, slick, loud, proud of taking, and I wanted her to see me as more than a ledger, but he said it in front of her, and the damage moved faster than anything I could rehearse. He said it like a verdict. People nodded. Someone laughed too sharp. The councilman patted Ethan's back, and for the first time in years I felt the world edit me down to what they'd always assumed. "You're the one who took the house payments," Ethan added, the words precise, as if he'd practiced them in a mirror. He was trying to be sharp, final. He wanted the room to sign the sentence. I reached for the chipped mug and felt the hairline crack like a map across the porcelain. An old map of all the nights I stayed awake paying a furnace bill while Ethan slept through college, and then rode a venture capital wave right into our parents' pride. The mug had been mine since the days the three of us were small, and my father had a job that came home smelling of grease. I fixed the furnace, I fixed the rusted gate, I fixed the math that kept the family afloat, and every month I dropped money into accounts no one thanked me for. In the top pocket of my jacket was a folded, grease-streaked receipt from 3 winters ago. The one that proved I'd wired the final mortgage payment on the old house after Ethan and his wife had convinced Mom and Dad to sell it, because the market was hot. I let the silence stretch. In that silence, I felt a seed of something that would not be quiet any longer. I told myself softly, because truth has a way of starting as a whisper before it becomes a sentence, that I had earned the right to stop apologizing for existing. I slid the receipt back into the pocket like a coin under a loose floorboard. The shoebox of receipts at home was the closest thing I had to a secret will, and I wasn't the kind of man who let the past be sold for a headline without leaving a mark. The room breathed again, and conversation resumed in a safer register, people trading small compliments and award-season chatter, but Ava's eyes were glassy. She kept rubbing thumb and forefinger together the way she always did when she was nervous, the same gesture she'd had as a toddler before she learned to bite her nails. I wanted to gather all the moments into one sentence and explain how the long nights, the overtime, the rusted pickup that I sold piece by piece had been the scaffolding of their life, but words would be another kind of currency that night, and I had already spent too many. The first quotable truth cracked in my head like lightning. You pay for peace with patience until patience looks like a receipt you can no longer cash. I didn't say it aloud. It sat in me like a note folded into a pocket, and I promised that if the world wanted to count me as only what I paid, it would soon have to count what I had kept. The humiliation planted itself in my ribs and did what humiliation does best. It taught you how to move in a room that had already turned on you. I left before dessert with Ava excuse zipped on my tongue, pride packed away, the chipped mug a ballast on the sideboard, because staying meant letting the night make decisions about me I couldn't take back. I drove across town in the kind of snow that lights up headlights into white blades, my old truck complaining under me like an animal with a cough, and the city smelled of fry oil and winter and the kind of cheap light that does not flatter anyone. At the house, the shoebox sat where I'd left it, under a pile of other receipts and insurance cards, the box itself with the lid stained from coffee. I opened it, and the papers were like bones, small, necessary, evidence of things that had been kept alive purely by my hands. I spread them on the kitchen table, each payment confirmation a small white flag of labor, and I felt something like respect for myself that had nothing to do with applause. Ava found me there, and we sat with the receipts between us. Her hand covered mine, and I felt how much of me she still needed to believe in. "You did everything right," she said, with that absolute faith children carry like a weapon. And for the first time in years, I let myself accept the truth she offered, not as comfort but as a plan. The receipts were a map. I knew what map meant. That every line could lead to a door if you followed it with patience and a little stubbornness. I also knew the secret advantage I hinted at the restaurant. The quiet fact that I had archived every digital message, every bank transfer email, every screenshot of a text where Ethan joked about selling the house and not putting my name anywhere because Dan's delicate about paperwork, and archive is another word for insurance when people think paper vanishes. I didn't tell Ava how far I'd go. I only showed her that I had proof and a plan to not be erased again. The blue mug sat on the table as if to remind me of the habit of fixing things, and I made a small, decisive choice. I would stop being the family unpaid labor and start being the man who holds them accountable. I filed the receipts into an envelope and labeled it plainly, "For now." I didn't write the words out of triumph. I wrote them like someone tucking an ember under ash, not yet afire but not yet cold. The next day at the plant I worked the way I always did, hands moving with the muscle memory of years, but my head wasn't on autopilot. It was cataloging, noting emails I might need, remembering the way Ethan bragged about the sale in a private message that could be captured with a screenshot. I started to be methodical about the small things, saving PDFs of every tax form, grabbing screenshots of the family HOA messages where Claire had told the group they'd be fine without me, finding an old promissory note Robert had once mentioned offhand, the kind of thing men say to show trust and then forget they said it at all. My life narrowed in the sweetest way. I had a job, a daughter, and a box of receipts that could be used for more than proof. They could be leverage. At night I walked through parts of town Ethan never saw, the bars where the truckers talked about their kids like medals and the diner where the coffee tasted like future mistakes and past courage. I listened to men talk about contracts and about lawyers with a curiosity that felt like hunger. I started making calls, not the loud ones but the careful ones. A friend in the title office suggested that equitable interest could be shown by payments even if a deed didn't list a name. An old attorney I knew from church, quiet, precise, said, "You keep everything started long enough and you'll find the rule someone missed." These were small things that stacked like bricks into a wall. I practiced my patience. I imagined walking into the same room where Ethan had laughed at me and watching the world discover a new fact. I am not invisible. The second section of my movement was not drama so much as the slow, steady tightening of a loop, collecting screenshots, saving chat logs, asking for copies of bank statements with the kind of casual curiosity that makes people talk more than they should. I baited no traps. I simply prepared, like a man who knows the storm is coming and chooses which windows to board. At the gym, between deadlifts and the clank of plates, I rehearsed the lines I would never say in public because I wanted this to fold on facts, not on the heat of a fight. The world is kinder to evidence than to speeches. Proof has a bluntness that embarrasses men who trade in stories. One night, my old friend Miguel, who runs a small IT shop, sent me a message with a screenshot attached to a private chat where Ethan joked that he'd kept Dad distracted with a fishing trip during the closing. The screenshot sat on my phone like a detonator. I didn't send it anywhere. I saved it into a secure drive and made a copy. Then I began the tedious work of building a record, receipts, screenshots, a timeline. I found an old email from Mom to Dad asking whether Daniel was sure he wanted to keep helping. There was evidence of their indifference, a paper trail that could be translated into law if someone read it the way a detective reads a map. I learned to be patient with my own anger. Each time I was tempted to lash out, to throw the receipts on the table and watch the house burn. I remembered the chipped mug, Ava's hand on mine, and the promise in the shoebox. The second quotable truth arrived one night as I sat at my kitchen table balancing accounts. A man's value isn't what he gives away. It's what he refuses to let be given away without a witness. I said it under my breath, and it stung. That sting became a method. I kept working, kept saving, kept being the boring, reliable man everyone took for granted, while I compiled the evidence that would make them stop. I started to see patterns. The way Ethan's arrogance made him sloppy online, the way Claire trusted her own jokes to private chats, the way Mom's pride in Ethan made her forget to document decisions. I began to craft a plan that did not rely on vengeance as a yell, but as a law. I would use their own words against them, expose their casual cruelty in formats the world respected: screenshots, notarized receipts, timestamps, because digital truth has a way of refusing polite lies. The tightening began to feel less like a trap and more like a net. It would catch whoever leapt into it and show them that the arena had rules. I taped the receipts down into a timeline, each payment an arrow, each text a pin. I ordered certified copies of the deed transfers and discovered a small clause buried in boilerplate on page 3 about confirmation of release by all title parties that had not been initialed. It was a clerical oversight at the time, or so their lawyer would claim, but it was a rule etched into paper that could not be ignored if someone asked the right question. The law is often a game of proofs, and proofs are things I had learned to collect like someone saving change. The third phase of the plan moved from collecting to setting. I arranged that the city council meeting where Ethan would pitch a new business idea, his next stage, would include a public Q&A, and I made sure the councilman who loved him would be there, and I made sure my dossier was in my hand. I wouldn't yell in that meeting. I'd hand over paper and watch the machinery of civic process do its work, because machines handle facts. The plan was calm and slow, and in the quiet before it snapped tight, I rehearsed the third quotable line that had settled into me like a splinter. Justice is patience with teeth. I liked how it sounded in my mouth. It was righteous but not theatrical, which was exactly the edge I needed. The rest of the tightening was invisible emails sent to the title company with careful questions, a certified letter to the attorney who'd overseen the sale asking for notarized copies, a quiet call to a reporter who covered municipal corruption. I did not gloat. I did not crow. I prepared like a man laying candles at the foot of a dark road, so when the light came it would find everything arranged. The trap took shape not as a spectacle but as a set of inevitable events. Public records that contradicted Ethan's story, a private chat where he'd laughed about pushing me aside, receipts that proved my claim to money and to the truth. I learned to let anger be a resource and not a performance. The moment before the news closed was oddly quiet, and I realized that for the first time I felt ready to take whatever came next, whatever it cost. The city hall hearing was full, and the room smelled like coat fabric and takeaway coffee. People who'd once applauded Ethan came and sat like an audience waiting for a different kind of show. I stood up when my name was called, and the fourth section, the part where things stop being plans and start being consequences, opened like a shutter. The shoebox sat in an envelope on the table. My proof, my small brass key I wore on a frayed ribbon for memory's sake as a talisman for the house we lost, and the recording of a private message Ethan didn't mean anyone to hear. I slid them across the table and watched, because history is made of small, undeniable objects, and I had enough of them to change a story. The final quotable came out then, simple and plain. You don't get to sell other people's lives and smile about it. The paper will remember. 2 sentences later, the city clerk read the clause he'd missed, the way a judge reads the law, and the room shifted. A reporter's phone screen lit up with the screenshot I'd given her, and the recorded message, Ethan's voice admitting he staged the closing, bounced through the meeting like a thrown stone. Social media did the rest. A video clip of the moment where Ethan laughed about moving the deal along went viral overnight, with the shoebox receipts posted on the reporter's feed, and the procedural clause that required all titled parties to initial the form became the unbreakable hinge on which the sale turned back into a legal mess. Ethan tried to bluff. He signed a paper that would have cost him everything but for the small oversight that tied him to his mistakes. In the end, the law, the receipts, the recording, the things I had preserved did what my anger never could. They undid him. The life lesson was plain and raw and worth every quiet, patient hour. Keep your receipts and your dignity. Sometimes the only justice you can count on is the kind printed on paper and the kind recorded on a hard drive. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It helps us share more true stories like this.